Hey everyone, Brandon here from TruckSafe Consulting. Aside from helping motor carriers and their drivers better understand discrete regulatory topics through the videos we push out here and elsewhere, we also help fleets with some of the more fundamental aspects of trucking, like setting up USDOT registrations, obtaining operating authority, and building out policies. And on the legal side of things, as transportation attorneys, we also work with carriers on structuring their operations to help minimize risk and best protect their assets. That said, this particular video is going to be a little different from our normal content. We're going to spend some more time exploring an issue that tends to arise with larger fleets that, for a variety of reasons, own more than one regulated carrier and have more than one USDOT number. The question we address fairly regularly for our clients is whether it makes sense to maintain that separation or instead consolidate those fleets under one USDOT registration. As you probably guessed by the title of this video, we're often in favor of consolidating fleets, and in this video we'll take a look at 5 reasons why that's the case. So stay tuned and be sure to hit the like and subscribe button below to stay up to date on all of our new DOT related content. Alright, so managing a regulated fleet of commercial vehicles and drivers can be daunting. Ensuring each and every driver is properly licensed and qualified, that every vehicle is properly marked with the company's details, that the fleet holds all the necessary permits and registrations, and that all regulatory filings are kept up to date is just a fraction of what's expected. And failing to follow through on any one of those can have pretty serious consequences. Now multiply that burden by 2, 3, 10, 20, or however many USDOT registrations your company chooses to maintain, and things become unwieldy pretty quickly. So why is it that some motor carriers choose to establish or maintain more than one USDOT number in the first place? Well, in my experience, fleets that maintain separate USDOT numbers can really be broken down into 2 categories. First up are those that have grown over time via corporate acquisition, through which they acquire other USDOT registrations. And then the second group are those that have deliberately established separate USDOT registrations for one reason or another, often a mistaken belief that doing so will provide some cover or continuity should one of their USDOT numbers be placed out of service. Of the hundreds of fleets that we've worked with over the past decade who have clung to more than one USDOT registration, I can count on one hand those where the circumstances actually warranted that structure, in my opinion. Typically, situations where the carriers had truly distinct business units or services that make sense to split out from each other. For the others, they were merely adding undue burden to their already strained compliance efforts. In my estimation, 95% or so of the carriers out there that maintain separate USDOT registrations would really benefit significantly from consolidating those registrations into a single account. And here's why. So number one, maintaining separate USDOT numbers does not necessarily afford the prime benefit you're likely after when you do that. Time and again, I've heard fleets say that they prefer to have more than one USDOT number in case things go south with one or the other. Put differently, if one fleet gets shut down or tagged with a less than satisfactory safety rating, they can transition the work over to the non-affected USDOT number, or so they think. Well, believe it or not, that was a popular strategy for decades, but it's certainly not a viable one today. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, which is tasked with regulating over 600,000 registered motor carriers in the U.S., became wise to this tactic more than a decade ago when it promulgated its so-called chameleon carrier regulations, effectively banning the practice altogether. In essence, those regulations prohibit motor carriers from setting up or using an affiliated USDOT registration for an improper purpose, which explicitly includes attempts to avoid a negative compliance history. Indeed, the agency now actively investigates and prosecutes chameleon carriers. If the agency becomes aware of a carrier transitioning drivers and trucks to a related carrier to avoid the impact of an out-of-service order, for example, or other negative compliance history, it can and will take action to prevent it. In these situations, the agency is empowered to consolidate the USDOT records of the USDOT registrations that are being used improperly. For example, if Carrier A has received an unsatisfactory rating and a resulting out-of-service order, but then tries to move trucks and drivers over to its related Carrier B, the FMCSA will consolidate Carrier A's and B's records such that the unsatisfactory rating and the out-of-service order applies to them both. So if this is your only rationale for maintaining separate USDOT numbers, don't. For the reasons we'll address in a minute, doing so only creates administrative inefficiencies and leads to other problems. Some carriers proffer a slight variation of this rationale, claiming it's better to maintain separate USDOT registrations and business entities for asset protection. While I agree that if done correctly, maintaining separate legal entities can offer some important protections to sophisticated businesses, doing so doesn't necessarily compel having more than one USDOT number. In fact, some of the most sophisticated carriers in the country are structured in a way that affords them the legal benefits of corporate separation without the administrative headaches of maintaining multiple USDOT registrations. Simply put, this is accomplished through intercompany lease agreements, through which related but separate legal entities exchange regulated equipment and drivers among themselves to operate under a single USDOT registration. So if your point is that it's better to have separate legal entities in the picture, I'm here to tell you can do so and still operate under a single USDOT number. All right, so number 2, maintaining separate USDOT numbers is not your only customer-facing option. Often when companies grow through acquisitions over time, they're hesitant to do away with the USDOT numbers they've acquired for fear of losing the brands and the customer relationships those entities have worked hard to build over time. Take this example. ABC Trucking is a Texas-based carrier that hauls food products for manufacturers in and around the state. Parent Corporation purchases ABC Trucking and wishes to retain the customer relationships that ABC Trucking has built. It's concerned that consolidating ABC Trucking's operations under Parent Corp's existing USDOT number will upset customers who aren't familiar with Parent Corp's brand. So it elects to maintain ABC Trucking's USDOT number and continue running those operations under that registration. Now, this is a fairly common and valid concern, but it's not one that can't be solved with some creativity. For the reasons we've already discussed and those we'll explore in a minute, Parent Corporation has a real interest in consolidating ABC Trucking's and its own USDOT registrations so that it only has one to manage. But it also has an interest in maintaining the ABC Trucking brand. Well, this can be accomplished a couple of different ways. First, Parent Corporation could add ABC Trucking as a DBA to its existing USDOT registration, thereby allowing it to mark its truck with either its legal name, Parent Corporation, or its trade name, ABC Trucking, and its USDOT number. This, in effect, allows the company to maintain the ABC Trucking branding that currently exists on the acquired trucks while swapping out the USDOT number for the parent corporations. Another option is for the company to leave the existing ABC Trucking branding on the trucks, but add the phrase operated by Parent Corporation and Parent Corporation's USDOT number to the trucks. Both options allow the company to retain the acquired entity's branding on the trucks while still operating under a single USDOT number. This is often enough to appease customers who are sensitive to the branding issue while allowing the carrier the benefit of the consolidated registrations. Now, I should note that both of these options could necessitate certain intercompany agreements and potential revisions or amendments to customer contracts, but those are rarely showstoppers. All right, so number 3, consolidating USDOT numbers eases administrative headaches. Without a doubt, the primary reason to consolidate USDOT registrations is to ease administrative burdens. To name just a few, consolidating USDOT numbers means only one MCS 150 to file up or update, only one set of driver qualification files, for example, applications, previous employer requests, etc., to manage, only one ELD platform to deal with, only one drug and alcohol testing program to administer, only one UCR filing to make and fee to pay, only one IFTA and IRP account to manage, only one accident register to maintain, only one CSA and SMS account to track, only one fleet of drivers and trucks to deal with. So to be sure, consolidating USDOT registrations takes some work on the front end, but the amount of time, effort, and money saved on the back end far outweighs the initial burden for most carriers. All right, number 4, consolidating USDOT numbers can streamline IFTA, IRP, and UCR filings and fees. Now, fleets subject to IFTA and IRP rules stand to realize even more significant benefits from consolidating USDOT registrations. Generally speaking, IFTA and IRP rules apply to fleets that operate larger commercial vehicles, usually those that weigh more than 26,000 pounds, either alone or in combination, across state lines. For those fleets who happen to maintain separate USDOT registrations, this can also mean maintaining separate IFTA and IRP accounts, which can be a nightmare to manage. Separate accounts means separate filings for each account, different cab cards to manage, etc. By consolidating USDOT registrations, fleets can move to a single IRP and IFTA account and save on the headaches. This is true even if the fleet retains the separate legal entities in which the separate USDOT registrations had been housed, provided there are intercompany lease agreements in place. Now, as for UCR, some fleets stand to save thousands in UCR fees per year by consolidating their USDOT registrations. Annual UCR fees are tiered based on fleet size and are tied to every interstate motor carrier's USDOT registration. Larger fleets generally pay more in UCR fees than smaller fleets, but the tiered fees are capped at 1,000 power units. Take this example, a conglomeration of 6 related carriers, each with their own separate USDOT registrations and each with 150 trucks. By maintaining separate USDOT numbers, that fleet is paying, at least in 2022, $5,835 per fleet in UCR fees for a total of $35,010 per year. If that carrier instead consolidated the fleets under a single USDOT number with a combined 900 trucks, it would owe only $5,835 a year, a nearly $30,000 in annual savings. Now, of course, this savings may not be as dramatic for fleets whose combined truck count pushes them into the highest UCR fee bracket, which results in a significantly increased premium. All right, number 5, consolidating USDOT numbers expands operational opportunities. So consolidating USDOT registrations can open up several possibilities, including, most notably, the free flow of equipment and drivers. Units that were previously assigned to a separate USDOT number can now be moved throughout the country and service different customers once all units are moved under a single USDOT number. All right, that's going to wrap up this video. Hopefully, we've offered some insight as to why it makes sense in many cases for carriers to consolidate their USDOT registrations. If you have any questions on that process, don't hesitate to reach out to us on our website at trucksafe.com. And for even more in-depth information and training on other major aspects of the federal and state safety regulations, be sure to check out our innovative online compliance courses for safety managers and drivers over at trucksafeacademy.com. Lastly, be sure to follow us on our various social media pages for the latest highway transportation news and analysis. Thanks for watching.